So in 28 years, I saw a lot of good stuff. Also saw some stuff that wasn't so good. Year was 1987. I was in Antarctica, of all places. The Navy had an ongoing agreement with the National Science Foundation. Our mission down there was to support those scientists. We're on loan from the Navy. We flew their airplanes, believe it or not. They were LC-130s. What's an LC-130? You know what a C-130 is. Big cargo airplane. 4 propellers. Well, the LC-130, the L is ski-equipped. Ski-equipped C-130s that can land anywhere in the continent. The objective was, if a scientists group said, hey, this is our mission this year, we want to go here, 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 all over the continent to do these experiments. Our job was to fly them out there with equipment, drop them off in the middle of nowhere, and then in 2-3 months, whatever, pick them up and take all their cargo back. So it was pretty cool. It was a unique mission. I was 22, 23 years old, Loadmaster. One of our missions, what we call a place called D-59. D-59 was a French base back in the 70s, okay, early 70s. And what happened was the French had requested, because we had this unique capability, that we go out and do a mission for them. So the U.S. agreed and said, okay, no problem, you know. They flew out there, they dropped off some cargo for the French. As they're going down the skiway, friction develops, right? And the friction causes like a suction effect, okay? So what they do to help them out, at 60 knots, the flight engineer will punch a button in the cockpit and he'll fire off the bottles, all 8 bottles. He gives them 1,000 pounds thrust per bottle to get that push and help them break that suction and snapping it off the ice and to get airborne. The flight engineer hit the button at 60 knots and the plane, boom, did what it was supposed to do. It took off. 2 of the bottles on the left side near the parachute door in the center snapped off the mounts. There was like a 3-point mount. It snapped off and they fired like rockets. One went through the number 2 exhaust. It's the engine on the most inboard side near the fuselage. Went up through the exhaust, destroyed that engine. The other one simultaneously hit the propeller on the number 2 and it came apart, which is why you see it in the pictures missing. And when a propeller comes apart like that, it explodes and it took out the number 1 engine, okay, on the left side of it. So now you've got a plane that's barely airborne, right? Just getting enough thrust to get airborne. Left side goes dead. So the right side, the number 3 and 4 engine on the right side, are at max power, right? These guys are, now the plane's starting to what they call yaw. You know, it's like, whoa, it's twisting because you lost 2 major engines. And the pilot basically countered with tail. He kicked the rudder over and he dropped the aileron the opposite direction to save the aircraft. So basically, as the plane's yawing and falling, he countered with those 2 flight surfaces and managed to put the plane back down. In doing so, you can imagine, it was pretty quick, and they slammed the nose gear into, you know, the fuselage because it wasn't, you know, they kind of just boom. And they teeter-tottered down the skiway, banging the wingtips and the whole 9 yards, and just a mess. And it must have been violent, you know. So they stopped the aircraft, middle of nowhere, D-59. So they just took all the gauges out of the airplane, whatever they could rob, you know, to salvage, and they left it there. They said, there's no fixing this thing, see you later. Doesn't snow a lot down there. Only snows a couple inches a year. But it slowly sank because of the weight into the snow. The French reached out to the U.S. government and said, hey, you guys aren't going to use that aircraft. We'd like to take it. So they said, what do you mean? They said, well, it's, you know, we'll dig it up. We'll pay for it. We'll salvage it. The U.S. government's kind of scratched their head and said, wait a minute. Let's talk to Lockheed. They've got their thoughts. So Lockheed came back and told the Navy, hey, look, that's patented. We don't want anybody else to have that capability. We think we can do the same thing and salvage the aircraft. So the thought at the time was, well, a brand new C-130, an LC-130, would cost about $44 million. The idea was go down there, pull it out of the snow, do an evaluation on it, and salvage it for $10 million and get it flying again for the mission. Okay, great. Sounds like a plan. So the following year, 1987, that's what we were doing. We were flying crews down there to, you know, dig this thing out of the snow and, you know, start off by hand because you can't obviously get equipment near the aircraft. You'll hurt it. They made a huge pit around this C-130. And they hooked up tractors after a few months, up a huge ramp, and they got it above ground. And sure enough, you know, they looked at it and said, hey, we can fix this, you know. We got to fix the wingtips. We got to fix the engines. The fuselage is a little twisted on the back. The tail kind of, instead of being straight up, twisted a little bit. It's flyable. So they said, we'll get it all back. December 9th, 1987. My crew gets assigned, go out to D-59, bring the civilians, the depot team out there, you know, because we had about a team of, you know, 10 or 15 civilians down there fixing the aircraft. They needed parts all the time, obviously. These guys were making good progress, but the weather started going to shit. And in D-59, that was the biggest problem in the 70s, was it was in a very bad location. It's like predictable, very cold, very risky, okay? So our pilots always do assessments and say, you know, we'll do our best shot, but if it's unsafe, we're not going in. Roger that. Well, this went on for weeks. Commanding officer at the time was doing the best he could to support it. And it wound up where weather was bad every night. He started getting pressure from the National Science Foundation because they're out of parts and they're waiting on us to deliver. You know, it's the 80s. You didn't have cell phones or anything cool. You just had letters that would show up every few weeks saying, honey, when are you coming home? So the attitudes started to flare up. They started making radio calls saying my squadron was not supporting, didn't care, blah, blah, blah. Understandable, you know. They just wanted to get the job done. So my CO came out at the next wardroom meeting and said, hey, don't do anything unsafe, pilots, but we really need to get out there and we need to bring them the critical parts that are sitting in supply right now. It's been a couple weeks. Do what you can. Okay, so they did. One pilot, oh, he was in the right seat on the C-130. The guy in the left seat was an 04 lieutenant commander experience. He just didn't have Antarctic experience like Ogden did. Ogden had been down there several seasons. So he was the senior. And he was the aircraft commander, so he made the calls on whether they go or not. And you had a flight engineer in the middle. So imagine this. You don't have a runway. You don't have anything but snow, right? Because it's middle of nowhere. The best they could do is line the runway with 55-gallon drums. And basically, they were like tiki torches. So after several approaches, Lieutenant Commander Ogden, you know, had control of the aircraft in the right seat. And he was trying like hell to get in. It was all guesswork. You know, so imagine looking out the window and everything's white and you can't see anything. But you know they're down there. You're at 1,000 feet and you know they're down there. And the guys on the radio are screaming, we can hear you, we can hear you, we just can't see you. So Commander Ogden was giving his best shot based on what the nav was feeding him for a runway, you know, his guess. The last approach, okay, as they were coming around, somebody, I think it was Ogden, turned around and said, there it is. So they were down low, slow. They dipped the right wing really hard. Airspeed fell off and they stalled it. So the only thing the Loadmaster remembers is the hard right turn. The other Loadmaster was up front checking the landing gear coming down because they dropped the gear real quick and they were moving flaps to get ready for the landing. The next thing anyone remembers is guys on the ground that were sitting there listening for the plane to fly over. One report had the guy on a skidoo sitting there looking down the runway, and he saw two lights from the nose of the aircraft come out of the clouds, but the aircraft flipping wingtip to wingtip. And he gunned his snowmobile as fast as he could to get away from the crash as it's hitting. It's tumbling, it's coming apart. The night before, my crew, I was on XD-03, and our first mission was obviously go out to D-59. We got halfway there, and the weather reports were just horrendous. They said, don't even bother. We turned our mission and went to the South Pole. Back at 3, 4 in the morning, landed, exhausted, after a 15-hour day. And I saw my roommate, and, his name is Rusty. And I saw him, I said, hey, Rusty, where are you going, man? He goes, yeah, we're going out D-59. I said, oh, shit. I said, hey, dude. I said, weather's really shitty out there, man. I said, I don't think you're going to get in. And he goes, probably not, but, we got to try. We got through our little pass down, and off he went. All I wanted to do was go to bed. I hear this beating on the door, boom, boom, boom in the barracks, boom, boom, boom. And I'm like, what the fuck? And I'm pissed because I'm going to go back out in another 6 hours or so. So I rip open the door and I go, what? And he goes, hey, phone call from duty office. What? I said, they know I'm crew resting. What the? So I was pissed. And I grabbed the phone like, Petty Officer Corrigan. He goes, Petty Officer Corrigan, Lieutenant, SDO, Squadron Duty Officer. I said, yes, sir. What's up? And he goes, can you make a SAR mission, search and rescue? I was like, what? SAR? We don't do SAR very often. What are you talking about? And he kind of pauses, and I see everybody looking around in the hallway. Everybody standing there with their hands on their face, leaning against the wall in the barracks. And I'm like, what the frick is going on? He goes, where have you been? I said, what do you mean, where have I been? I'm crew resting, sir. He was 8 o'clock in the morning. I said, sir, I got in at 3 in the morning. I'm exhausted. What is going on? Oh, shit. Okay, hey, X-ray Delta 03 crashed on approach last night into D-59. Need you to fly this mission. And of course, I was stunned. I was like, what? Oh, shit. Okay, yeah, I can do it. He goes, you don't mind? I said, sir, I don't care. Let's go. Where are we going? He goes, all right, got a shuttle heading your way. I'll be down there in about 10 minutes. Gotta go. I said, roger that, sir. Ran back to my room, and I was like, who the fuck was on X-ray Delta 03? I didn't stop, talk to anybody. I just kind of ran, So I rip open the door, and I go to grab my bag, and I look up, and I see my roommate's bunk. And right above that, pictures of all his family, his 4 kids, young kids, his beautiful wife. And I'm thinking, oh shit, that's Rusty. Even more, I gotta go, So I grab my stuff and I'm trying to remember what I gotta bring, and okay, go out the door, and I'm gone. Everybody in the hallway just standing there like, hey, have you heard? I said, no, I gotta go. So I took off. Shuttle picked us up, off we went. We fueled up aircraft and we took off. And right behind us was another airplane. The idea was, we were the SAR, search and rescue. We would land if the weather would let us. If the approach was good, we'd go in, we'd land, we'd pick up the survivors. How many there were, we don't know. So I knew there were 12 people on board, and I had no idea who was left. It was about a 2.5, 3 hour flight out there. So the whole way we're all talking on, you know, ICS, you know, internal communication system, who it could be, is everybody okay, we'll find out, all this good stuff. We hear the second plane behind us, the second SAR, the backup, took off right on time. And we're just hauling ass for this location. And we're hearing intermittent radio calls with, you know, the base saying, okay, we've got some survivors, and it's broken. You know, of course, the radio comms back then weren't great. We pieced it together. There were 2 people that were killed. Immediately I thought of Rusty. Probably not going to make it, because if they crashed as bad as I hear they crashed, then that's pretty much a done deal. So anyway, we go to shoot the approach. Weather is horrible. Pilots have definitely, I mean, these are seasoned pilots. I had 2 04s up front too, and they were just like, no way. So they took it around several times, and then by that time, the other airplane behind us said, you know what, I see a break in the weather, we're going in. So sure enough, they had for a 30-second break where the weather parted, they could see the ski landed. So we kept, our mission changed immediately from search and rescue to investigation. So we had a photographer on board, he was taking pictures, and he was surveying the accident. I saw nothing but debris scattered across a white runway. I saw the main landing gear ski, which is pretty huge. I mean, it's big. I remember seeing the cockpit in a separate location. It was in a ball by itself. I saw a wing snapped off, you know, a couple hundred feet away. And we just kept flying over this thing. And each time I thought, oh God, Rusty's dead. You know, God, how am I gonna get my mind around this? And we land a few minutes later, and the other plane's taken off. They've got the survivors, all the survivors. 2 people had perished. One was a commander, ground officer, just got out to a squadron in Antarctica. He came from New Zealand. He was swapping with another maintenance officer, and that was his first good deal trip to go out and see this site. He was like a 30-year veteran in the Navy. Very experienced person, good dude from what I understood. I never met the man. The second class petty officer that was going out was a supply keeper. He was going to check on parts, making sure the right parts were getting out to the C-130s. Rusty was in between the 2, between Beatty and Bailey, Lieutenant Commander Bailey, strapped in. He says he doesn't remember much. The junior loadmaster getting up to check the nose landing gear, because there's a little pin you got to watch for when the gear goes down. He heard the pilot's call, landing gear down. Loadmaster got up. He felt a sharp turn, hard right turn, and then next thing he knew, he woke up and the plane was upside down. So I got to get out of here. And he unbuckled himself. He crawled out through the hole where the cockpit once sat. So believe it or not, he got outside and he was wandering around kind of dazed and confused. And he saw the other loadmaster crawling around in the snow. Don't know how, he just landed in the snow. Went to the cockpit and helped the pilots and the flight engineer get out. Lieutenant Commander Ogden crashed on his side. So he was really messed up. I mean, he was bleeding from the head and everything else. And the navigator was watching the scope so intently, he basically ate the scope. So, but his seat took out the kneecap of the guy, the senior navigator sitting behind him, you know, on the bench. And just a whole nightmare, right? Well, the good news was D-59 had to have a medic down there. And this medic was an E5, young kid. And he did a triage like MASH. Basically went around assessing the situation as the victims came in. He saved their lives. So this kid got all sorts of accolades later on, but without him, it would have been more casualties, no doubt. They bring out a skidoo with, you know, they're towing a sled, and here comes the first victim. It's AK-2 Petty Officer Beatty. He was in the command less than, I don't know, 6 months, you know, and he was young. He had family. Didn't know much about him, never met him. And I just remember bringing him on and putting him in a litter, you know, a hospital litter, strapping him down. And he was in a body bag. Squadron took care of it. Rusty was actually fine, you know, but the crew, you know, they all eventually recovered. The severe ones got taken care of at the New Zealand hospital. They flew them all home just to say, look, you guys have been through enough this deployment. We got it. So they all went home. And then anyway, hope you enjoyed that story. If you did, give me a thumbs up.